Chaos on NRC's campus? Say it isn't so, said no one ever, because at this point I think we're all aware just how many wacky misadventures our favorite kiddos have been on or responsible for. So today, the Investigative Bureau has taken it upon ourselves to inform all of you lovely viewers of the various misdeeds and misdemeanors the students of NRC are allegedly responsible for. Of course, we also have some reports from our junior detectives to share as well, and if you happen to feel inspired and want to submit your own story, or perhaps even another, please do so using the form linked in the description below. As always, I'd like to thank our junior detectives for their submissions, regardless of whether they are featured, because your creativity is inspiring. There were also a lot of fainting or death-like sleep submissions in this latest batch. In fact, we'd have way more than 2 nickels due to this, which we at the Investigative Bureau collectively agree requires some further investigation of a certain head mage. But please know, for similar reports, those that were submitted earlier received precedence for their coverage. As in all past iterations, this video is set up in quiz-style format, where I'll be giving you some fabricated backstory of an alleged incident on campus, 3 possible suspects, and a bit of thinking time for you to decide who done it. Once time is up, I'll reveal the true culprit and why they did what they did. Since all stories are fabricated, spoilers for EN server story content will be light, if it exists at all. With that out of the way, it is time for us to dive into our first headline, generously submitted by Junior Detective Meloo. What tale do you have for us today? Twin eels kidnapped from Mostro Lounge to make skincare for Pomfiore House Warden. During the first week of April, the Octopanel trio had been reported missing from the Mostro Lounge on a particularly busy day, resulting in the lounge having very little coverage. Carell happened to be on his way to the lounge to reportedly check in on the student activities, perhaps also desiring a treat for himself, when he witnessed 2 students, Jade and Floyd, being kidnapped by a few other students with the help of Housewarden Azul Ashengrotto. The trio were attempting to push the twin eels into a mirror of another dorm, however, the 2 twins were loudly protesting, Floyd especially so. After speaking with the students and discerning the truth of the matter, Cruel gave the kidnappers a stern talking to before informing Vil of the situation, who had a few words of his own for the culprits as well. Our suspects in this case are Ace, who had recently been indebted to Vil and was seen around the lounge during the time of this incident, Apple, who had been looking for a gift for Vil's birthday, and Kaleem, who had wanted to throw a party for Vil with expensive goodie bags as presents. Who done it? Honestly, I'm not too sure myself which one of these fellows is responsible. I feel like Ace would be an easy person to pin this on, but somehow I'm leaning more towards Kaleem. I can see Azul trying to appease Kaleem while also garnering favor from Vil, the 2-for-1 special. But we'll have to turn it over to our junior detective to tell us the truth. So who was the true perpetrator? According to our junior detective, the culprit in this case was, in fact, Apple Felmir, but he had help from Ace Tripola. Apple had been having a hard time deciding on a gift for Vil's upcoming birthday and brought it up to his freshman fellows during lunch one day. Ace suggested getting that skincare product Vil had plugged on his Magicam at the beginning of the school year, and after some digging on their part, assisted by Magicam wizard Cater, the 2 found the creator of the product to be Azul. Not having learned anything from his previous business dealings with Azul, Ace encouraged Apple to make a deal with the cephalopod to get his hands on the product for Vil. Apple agreed, and Azul seemed happy to offer his services, only asking that Apple bring Vil to the lounge on his birthday to give him the gift then, and asking to use Hartslable as the location for the product creation to keep it hush-hush from Vil. Once Ace received permission from Housewarden Rosehearts to have a study group, the twins were collected and the lot headed over to Hartslable. However, along the way, Apple let it slip that he was getting Vil some exclusive skincare courtesy of Azul, and the twins were not about to have that. The resulting argument confused Ace and Ethel, but having already signed a deal, they didn't want their efforts to go to waste. And so they, along with Azul, tried to force the twins into Hartsville, which was interpreted by bystanders to be kidnapping. Bill was understandably disappointed in the affair. Ace was beheaded for lying about the purpose of the visit and nearly bringing Floyd to the dorm unannounced. And Azul was angry that he wasn't going to be able to use Bill's birthday at the lounge as a marketing campaign. Jade and Floyd were understandably upset at the deception and are reportedly seeking compensation from all parties. Apple and Ace, my oh my, you should have known not to make deals with the devil. But at least their misfortune could become our joy. Thank you so much, Meloo, for reporting on this lovely tale. Our next headline is NRC campus flooded with rubber ducks. Staff unamused. Magicam influences many, and even the students of NRC are at times unable to resist its charms. One such event was when a new line of rubber ducks had been popping up all over the platform, with various influencers clamoring to get rare and exclusive varieties. This resulted in a small buzz on campus, which Sam was happy to oblige. But one duck turned into two into three, and suddenly there was a whole stock market on campus dedicated to these ducks. Some students were bringing their entire collections to class, fearing their dormmates might steal them while they were away. Others produced convincing counterfeits to sell for a profit, with one dorm even going so far as to create an entire safety deposit-style room where ducks could be housed for a fee. With tensions rising due to this rapidly expanding market and the cost of some ducks becoming impossibly high, NRC staff took to banning the ducks entirely. While the ducks disappeared from classrooms, an underground black market still continued to buy, sell, and trade until it was discovered that the ducks were all counterfeits. The ringleader was reprimanded and made to give back a part of the profits to the affected students. However, anyone that filed a claim also had to endure detention, since no one was supposed to have the ducks on campus at all, and buying them from the black market on campus was still a violation of school rules. Our suspects in this case are Azul, who is known to engage with some shady business dealings, Ruggy, who is known to make a profit from just about anything, or Floyd, who was delighted by the chaos. Who done it? While Azul and Ruggy seem like the most likely culprits, our detectives uncovered the truth in the form that is Floyd. Apparently, he thought these little plastic toys were so funny given how many people were falling over themselves to get them, that he got into painting blank ducks to look like some of the rarer varieties, selling them on the side in a backdoor deal to unsuspecting customers. Since he claims to have gotten them elsewhere and because he's so gosh darn intimidating, most folks took the loss. But unfortunately for Floyd, he gets bored pretty easily, and his fascination with painting the ducks faded away after a few weeks of running this underground black market. In his bored state, he blabbed to one of his customers that he made all of the ducks, and that turned into communal outrage. When staff got wind of the situation, Floyd was promptly punished. The few were brave enough to come forward to collect their refunds, not wanting to end up in detention alongside the moody eel who would most definitely be blaming them and not himself for this outcome. Who thought that such cute little trinkets could cause such harm? Our next headline was provided by Junior Detective Lustrous. What do you have in store for us today? An RC student becomes terrified and falls unconscious after someone smiled at them. Jamil was running errands for Kaleem and had finished shopping at the mystery shop when he met our culprit outside the store. The culprit managed to wrangle Jamil into a conversation, and a few moments later, the Scarabia Vice House Warden was seen looking terrified and slowly inching away from the culprit after they flashed him a smile. A few moments later, Jamil dropped to the ground unconscious, alarming our culprit and bystanders alike. Luckily, Jamil's fall was cushioned by a bush, and after finding out the true reason behind the collapse, no disciplinary action was taken. Our suspects in this case are Malleus, who needed to pick up some batteries from Sam's for Roaring Drago, Riddle, who had needed to get some more notebooks from Sam's, or Vargas, who was bringing Sam a restock of his photo cards. Who done it? Honestly, I can't see any of these fellows scaring Jamil with a smile, but I can see Vargas wrangling him into a conversation. Malleus and Riddle would both be respectful of Jamil's time if he told them he was running errands, but Vargas is another story entirely. He's also known for his smile, so I'm gonna have to go with him, but let's turn it over to our junior detective to discover the truth. Apparently, it was, in fact, Vargas who was responsible for this mishap, but perhaps not for the reasons one might think. According to our detective, Vargas, upon seeing one of his star students exit the mystery shop, wanted to strike up a conversation with Jamil. However, partway through their conversation, he smiled at Jamil while, unbeknownst to him, a huge caterpillar crawled over his shoulder and looked Jamil dead in the eyes. Jamil, being terrified of bugs, started slowly backing away from the coach, while Vargas stayed completely oblivious. Witnesses say it was impossible not to see that Jamil was terrified, but Vargas was so enthralled in what he was saying that he didn't realize it until the caterpillar jumped off his shoulder, landing only an inch away from Jamil. The boy, understandably, promptly fainted. Reports say that 30 minutes later, Jamil came to, after Vargas took him to the infirmary. When the true cause of the fainting episode was revealed, no disciplinary action was taken towards the coach, although Vargas was allegedly a bit sad that it wasn't his dazzling smile after all. Thank you so much, Lustrous, for this wonderful report. Now, on to our next headline. NRC staff rescue stranded eel from campus rooftop. One fine afternoon, a concerned student approached Coach Vargas and informed him that they, along with several other classmates, hadn't seen fellow student, Floyd Leach, return from flight practice. Assuming the misbehaving eel was having another one of his mood swings and cutting class, Vargas gave the rest of his students partner exercises to keep them preoccupied while he searched for the eel. What he assumed to be an easy task turned into a multi-faculty effort, however, when Floyd was found stranded high up on one of the main building's rooftops in his mer form, using magic to pump water over his gills. The eel claimed that some jerk threw a potion at him while he was making his flight round and it had reversed his transformation. Pharrell was tagged in to make an emergency transformation potion, Vargas interrogated his class to find the culprit, and Train kept the eel afloat with magical support. When the perpetrator was finally caught, they were given several weeks of detention as well as remedial alchemy lessons to understand the extent of this danger. Our suspects in this case are Riddle, who Floyd may have been teasing during their flight practice, Jamil, who may have been trying to get back at the eel for his role in Book 4, and Floyd, who is known to be loosey-goosey with his transformation potions. Who done it? In a shocking twist of fate, it was actually Floyd who was responsible for his own stranding. You see, Floyd isn't very good at tracking when he needs to take his transformation potions to remain in human form. And on this particular day, the effects wore off with very unfortunate timing. Now, he would have been able to get back to the sports field where his emergency potion was if he hadn't been trying to mess with Riddle, which is how he ended up so high in the first place. To try to escape the teasing, Riddle quickly ascended toward the top of the school, knowing full well that the mermen weren't exactly keen on flying that high. Floyd, however, enjoying the chase, couldn't have cared less and pursued Riddle anyway. Since he was so focused on catching up, he hadn't noticed his ears turning back into fins, or his hands growing webbing, until he started having trouble breathing. An emergency stop was performed and water magic applied, but it was awfully boring waiting for rescue, and Riddle wasn't returning anytime soon to see what had become of his pursuer. So when Vargas finally showed up, Floyd made a fib to get some entertainment. He alleges that the lie was worth the punishment since he got to witness a bunch of folks scrambling like panicked ants below him while he waited to get transformed back. While other students praised him for getting their classes canceled that afternoon, the staff were not happy, and so punishment was dealt swiftly to this silly little eel. My, what a guy. But now it is on to our next headline, submitted by junior detective FandomNerd. What do you have in store? NRC student reports strange object missing, alarming staff. A student at NRC recently approached the staff with a unique concern. They had misplaced their tooth jar and wanted help locating it, as it was of vital importance to them. When questioned by the staff, they revealed that the tooth jar was, as the name suggested, a small jar filled with actual human teeth. They were quick to assure the staff that all of said teeth were obtained legitimately and with permission from their previous owners, which was not quite as reassuring as the student assumed it was. After a bit of looking and inquiring, the jar was found to be in possession of Grim, who had mistaken its contents for candy. Once Grim had discovered the teeth were actually teeth and not candy, the dire beast was quick to return it. He had, thankfully, not consumed any of the teeth, and the student in question forgave Grim, but still scolded the dire beast for stealing. Our suspects in this case are Trey Clover, who has expressed an interest in a career in dentistry, Lilia Van Rouge, who is known to collect all sorts of odd items, and Scully J. Graves, who enjoys the macabre Halloween-related things. Who done it? Scully being here is wild, all things considered, but I could see him having this type of curiosity. However, since it is, in fact, teeth, specifically, in my mind, it's gotta be Trey. But as always, we must turn to our junior detective for the truth. To likely no one's surprise, the culprit was, in fact, Trey. Hooray! Who had been keeping the milk teeth of his siblings, friends, and himself as a personal memento and study tool for his future dentistry career. After all, how could he be a good dentist if he didn't know the structure and composition of teeth? As he grew older, he started supplementing this admittedly unusual study aid with purchases from various museums and potion ingredient stores. Trey, why do you have to be like this? I am not sure there are enough detectives in the world to puzzle that one out, but regardless, thank you so much, FandomNerd, for your coverage of this event. But now it is on to our next headline. Mostro lounge worker threatens to unionize after patron makes 10 to-go orders every day to reportedly combat loneliness. One evening, a Mostro Lounge employee barged into the VIP room and demanded that he and his co-workers be allowed to unionize. Alarmed, Azul Ashengrotto asked what had spurned this development, and it was revealed that this employee had not received wages for their last week of work. They claimed to have repeatedly delivered mobile orders to one specific individual whose house warden then kept them captive in their dorm, chatting with them like they were friends until the next order was placed. The worker even lamented that they had been threatened by the order placer to continue spending time with their house warden when they complained about the constant deliveries, with another of the dorm students even chiming in about how delightful it was that their lonely house warden was making new friends. With a bit of additional investigation, it was determined that the ordering individual had not properly communicated to their house warden that they were remotely ordering snacks, and so their house warden mistakenly assumed the employee was coming over to hang out with them instead. Given how long the employee was gone, the on-duty managers, Jade and Floyd, had just assumed they were a no-show for work and docked their pay accordingly. The matter was easily resolved after a short chat with all parties, and the employee received appropriate compensation along with a bit of hush money to prevent further talks of unions. Our food ordering suspects in this case are Sebek, who serves a very lonely dragon, Ortho, whose brother is allegedly very lonely, and Ruggy, who may have wanted to swipe a few bites on Leona's dime. Who done it? culprit in this case was, in fact, Sebek. The crocodile had brought back snacks from the Mostro Lounge to share with Malleus, and after the dragon commented on how much he'd liked them, Sebek routinely put in takeaway orders for his liege. However, Malleus, being unfamiliar with technology, assumed the employee responsible for dropping off the orders was bringing him gifts instead. To repay them for their generosity, Malleus insisted that they stay and enjoy the snacks with him, offering tea and turning what would have been a quick delivery into a semi-awkward hangout since the employee was much too afraid of him to say no. When they were running low on food, Sebek would demand that the employee replenish the dishes for his liege and order another round since Malleus seemed super happy with both the company and food. When confronted by the employee, Sebek was quick to retort that they should be happy his lord allowed them to stay in his presence and even converse with him, and that to try to give anyone else the responsibility of delivering the snacks would be treasonous. Silver had been nearby but sleeping, so when he heard that Malleus had been having a frequent visitor, he commented on how nice it was that Malleus was making new friends. Once the whole truth was revealed, Malleus became a bit disheartened, although the employees said they'd be more than happy to hang out with him again, just off the clock. This not only saved the campus from being frozen, but got the employee a very generous bonus from the dragon as an apology for his misunderstanding. Our next headline was submitted by Junior Detective Desia Sanders, with their tale of NRC student forgets alchemy ingredients for class, decides to cook risotto instead. Professor Carell noticed something peculiar during an alchemy class project one day. Two students who had been partnered together were making a substance that did not look like the potions in the other cauldrons. When Professor Carell asked students A and B why their potions looked so different from the others, student A casually replied with, "Oh yeah, we forgot the ingredients, so we just started cooking risotto." While this unusual creation did not damage the cauldron or classroom, students A and B still had to remake the potion with the correct ingredients, of course. Our suspects in this case are Ace and Deuce, who were cramming for the project the night before, Yu and Grim, who had been late because of something that day, and Floyd and Jade, who saw the whole thing as hilarious. Who done it? Since Jade and Floyd were laughing, I don't think it was them, but between the rest of the brain cell kiddos, I have no idea who this could be. Let's see who our junior detective caught expanding their culinary horizons. To perhaps no one's shock, it was in fact Ace and Deuce. Ace and Deuce had actually been studying for the project and were well prepared, but before leaving, Deuce accidentally grabbed the wrong bag of ingredients. What he thought was the bag for the potion was actually a bag with a risotto making kit. Realizing his mistake all too late, Deuce was about to leave to get the right ingredients, only to be shocked by Ace, who threw the risotto into the pot anyways. When asked why, Ace responded with, "Well, we already got the ingredients, why not use them?" Both students were made to take a remedial lesson where they had to recreate the right potion, and no one was allowed to eat the risotto for fear of cross-contamination with prior potions made in the same cauldron. Brain cell boys doing brain cell things. Yeah, understandable. Thank you so much, Desia Sanders, for your lovely report. But now it is on to our next headline. NRC students' argument about potatoes becomes campus-wide incident, salting in detention. One afternoon, a few students were arguing about the meaning of being called a potato after they received such a comment from Vil Schoenheit. This led to an argument, which then led to a bet, and the two confronted a bunch of other students about what they thought could be the meaning behind the phrase. While most brushed off the incident or laughed, a certain someone smelled chaos and decided to offer a public debate as a solution. The two feuding students latched onto this idea and printed out makeshift posters with the date and time of the debate. Despite the silly nature, some curious students figured it might be worth attending, and some others figured the inevitable fistfight would be entertaining. So on the day of the event, more than half the student body shuffled into the courtyard to get a glimpse of the feuding students. The event grew so massive that the Mostro Lounge even opened up a temporary stall to sell refreshments to the crowd. Despite the successful turnout, the feuding students did not get prior approval for the event, and staff had to quickly shut it down since the crowd was a safety hazard. The feuding students were reprimanded by both staff and Vil before being given detention. Our suspects in this case are Ace and Apple, Deuce and Sebek, or Grim and Jack. Who done it? In this case, it was none other than Deuce and Sebek who got into this specific scuffle. Deuce wasn't really sure what Vil had meant and decided to bring it up to his friend group when a passing Sebek decided to chime in with a berating comparison to dirt since potatoes were a root vegetable. Apple had tried to clarify since he was not only a Pomfiore student but close-ish to Vil. However, the two squabblers paid him no mind. Instead, they decided to conduct their own research by quizzing others around campus, eventually asking Jade for his opinion, which is where they got the idea for a public debate. Both were so eager to be declared right that they forgot to actually ask for permission to hold the event and were thusly punished when it blew out of proportion. A very tired Apple asked Vil to explain the true meaning to the two, and the house warden did, but only after punishing the pair with some choice comments of his own. The two embarrassed fellows have vowed never to argue with one another again, but only time knows if this vow will remain unbroken. Our next headline was submitted by Junior Detective Colin, Livana. What tale do you have for us? School-wide project on the personality of enchanted objects goes awry. Oh so beloved headmage Dyer Crowley had recently paid a visit to his school's rival, Royal Sword, to discuss some important business with Headmaster Ambrose. After noticing how the headmaster's sugar pot was acting all sassy, Crowley returned to NRC with an inspired idea. A surprise project where the students split into groups to observe the personality of objects they've personally enchanted while giving said objects basic tasks, later reporting what they've learned. However, as a twist, everyone was assigned a partner at random via lottery. Riddle had the unfortunate pleasure of being paired with Floyd for their project and was determined to finish it quickly to get away from the Leech Twin. This led to the two grabbing a random mess of janitorial products from around the school for their test. However, after Riddle enchanted the objects and Floyd gave the order, the poor unfortunate eel was attacked by the cleaning supplies, prompting Riddle to get help. Sadly, anyone and everyone who tried to help was met with the same hostility, with an enchanted toilet brush assaulting Trey, Vil having his beautiful face bullied by a litany of dirty mops, and Crowley being attacked with everything at once as soon as he showed up with the janitorial tools going so far as to lock him into a closet. Fortunately, Professor Train showed up just in time to disenchant the objects, but no one seemed to know why the enchantment became so violent in the first place. After a bit of investigating, Train figured out who the true culprit was and why the project went so sideways. Our suspects in this case are Riddle, who was mumbling about how much he hated Floyd, Floyd, who thought it would be funny if the enchanted objects went wild, or you, who had been doing janitorial work as a part-time job to earn some fall marks. Who done it? As much as I would like to blame Floyd, I don't think it was him. I can't imagine Riddle allowing him to cast the spell for their joint project, so it feels more likely to me that Riddle's underlying emotions might have muddied the waters, but even if that was the case, I doubt the cleaning tools would have attacked Trey, too. This only leaves you, but they don't have magic, so I have no idea how they would have done it. Guess it's time for our junior detective to fill us in. According to their report, Yu was the culprit. While Yu doesn't know any magic, the students learned something new about enchanted objects due to this fiasco. Apparently, objects take on the personality, attitude, and emotions of the person who uses them the most once enchanted. Since Yu was made to do cleaning work when they first arrived and had taken it on as a part-time job ever since, their grievances about NRC students had unintentionally seeped into the tools. Therefore, when the objects became enchanted, they only had one thing on their inanimate minds: revenge. This was later found out when Yu heard what had happened and profusely apologized for unintentionally causing such chaos. Fortunately, nobody blamed Yu for what had happened. In fact, they couldn't, considering Yu almost died on numerous occasions because of NRC shenanigans. But this didn't stop the affected students from complaining about how traumatized they'd become, directing their ire towards the head mage instead. I, for one, think Yu deserves a vacation, but I also think that this was a delightful report. So thank you so much, Colin, Livana. Our last headline was also submitted by a junior detective, but they are anonymous, and they are reporting on the case: NRC student found unconscious in middle of school hallway. Panic ensues. One afternoon, a student heading to their potionology class found one of their fellows lying in the middle of the hallway. This student tried to wake them up, but to no avail, even going so far as to use minor harmless spells to try to jolt them awake. As panic set in, the student declared that the individual must be dead and rushed to Professor Carell to inform him of the unfortunate demise. Alarmed, Carell rushed to the scene, only to find that the student did in fact have a pulse and must have mistakenly consumed a potion that puts one into a very deep, death-like sleep. Carell whipped up the remedy and the student was revived, only to be scolded about such reckless potion consumption. Our suspects in this case are Silver, who was famously known for falling asleep all of the time, Yu, who had potionology class the period prior to the incident, and Ortho, who was heading to his class that day. Who done it? I don't think Ortho can be affected the same way people are by potions, so I'm ruling him out, but between Silver and Yu, it's unclear who drank the potion here. So I'll turn it over to our junior detective to explain. According to them, it was Yu who had unfortunately consumed this extreme sleep aid. Grimm had dropped their completed potion from the class prior onto Yu, and a little bit of it ended up getting in their mouth, causing them to fall asleep on the spot. Grimm panicked and ran off to get help, so Yu was alone when Ortho stumbled across them. Ortho then tried to read their vital signs, but the magic surrounding them messed with his equipment, and he asked another student to use some minor spells to try to rouse the prefect. When nothing worked, the pair rushed to Carell for help. With the students, Ortho asked for help, proclaiming that the prefect must have been dead since they weren't responding to the spells. Thankfully, Carell was already aware of today's potion's effects, and so once he confirmed Yu's state, the prefect was revived and briefly scolded. It was at this time that Grimm came back with a concerned Ace and Deuce, who were just happy to see the prefect back in the land of the living. Thank you to our anonymous reporter for this lovely tale, and thank you to all you lovely viewers for making it this far into the video. As always, I'd love to know how many culprits you got correct and what your overall thoughts are on this video series. Do you like these videos and want more content like them? Are you inspired and wishing to submit your own tale for a chance to be featured in a future video? Let me know all that and more down below, and of course, if comments aren't your thing, you can always like and subscribe instead. Naturally, I must also remind you that you're amazing, and I hope you have a wonderful day.